Today, inshallah, we'll spend little time with a great tabi'i, a student of many of the Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'een, and specifically Abdullah bin Abbas and Abdullah bin Umar radiyallahu anhuma. The type of tabi'i for whom some of the historians chose the title of Majma'ul Bahrain, the person who had collected two oceans within himself. And the two oceans are the ocean of ilm and amal. The ocean of Abdullah bin Abbas and of Abdullah bin Umar radiyallahu anhuma. And that is Sayyidina Saeed bin Jubair radiyallahu anhu rahimahullah. Sayyidina Saeed bin Jubair rahimahullah started his life as a slave. And finally he became the leader of the whole ummah. When we open the book of Ahadith and the book of Tafasir, you will find in the chain of narrators Saeed bin Jubair rahimahullah. And especially the books of Tafasir are full of narrations on the authority of Sayyidina Saeed bin Jubair rahimahullah, because he was the closest student of Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas radiyallahu anhu. And in those days, historians later on chose the name as Majma'ul Bahrain for him, the one who gathered the two oceans. But in those days, as Imam Abu Na'im Asfahani rahimahullah narrates, they used to call him Jahbadatul Ulama, the leader of the scholars of the time. Imagine during the time when there are Sahaba around and great Tabi'een are there, for a person to get this title of Jahbadatul Ulama, the leader of the scholars of the time. And I mentioned briefly about that in the previous session also, as we were talking about Sayyidina Al-Hasan Al-Basri rahimahullah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through this deen have given honor to some people who otherwise, from the worldly point of view, were considered totally disrespected and humiliated, and they were slaves to others. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through learning the deen and practicing this deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, made them the leader of this ummah. Saeed bin Jubair rahimahullah, as long as Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas radiyallahu anhu was alive, and Abdullah bin Abbas radiyallahu anhu used to live in Kufa, Saeed bin Jubair spent all of his time with Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas radiyallahu anhu. Abdullah bin Abbas radiyallahu anhu trusted Saeed so much that while he was alive, he used to ask Saeed bin Jubair to teach people hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So Saeed bin Jubair would say, Abdullah, you are my teacher, and if a person like you is around, how can someone like me narrate ahadith and teach people ahadith? He used to say, no, this is the right time for you to narrate the ahadith, so that number one, people will know how much trust I have in you, and they will know that you have gathered all of my knowledge and information that I had, and number two, if you make mistake, this is the right time that I can correct you. If I'm gone, then who would correct you? Finally, as Saeed bin Jubair started teaching the hadith during the time of Abdullah bin Abbas, the teacher is there, and Abdullah bin Abbas radiyallahu anhu is just sitting over there listening, and Saeed bin Jubair will be taking the class and teaching people hadith and tafasir. Gradually, Abdullah bin Abbas radiyallahu anhu, as he saw the ability of Saeed bin Jubair, he stopped even answering people's question. And you know, Abdullah bin Abbas, we talked about him earlier, was a type of Sahabi that he had fixed time for all different sciences of Islam, which means people would come and ask him about the poetry, about the language, about tafsir, about fiqh, about hadith, about ilm al-miras, the inheritance, all different type of sciences, and he had fixed time for all of these different sciences. The scholars of the time would come and ask him questions about these different sciences during those times. But now, Abdullah bin Abbas radiyallahu anhu said to Saeed, I would spend my time in the ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you would be conducting all of these classes on my behalf. So Saeed bin Jubair rahimahullah started teaching all of these sciences while Abdullah bin Abbas radiallahu anhu was still alive. This is how Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas radiallahu anhu trained Saeed bin Jubair rahimahullah. He is the teacher of Imam Zainul Abidin rahimahullah. Saeed bin Jubair, on the other hand, had so much love for his teacher, he used to say that each time I learn a new hadith from Abdullah bin Abbas, I feel like kissing his forehead, but only the fear and the respect that I have for him doesn't allow me to get that close to him. This was his ilm. On the other hand, you look at his amal, at his practices. We all know Sayyidina Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhu was a Sahabi, one of the youngest Sahaba ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'een. But other Sahaba ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'een used to look at the practices of Abdullah bin Umar and then follow those because they knew each and everything that he performed, he is following the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The person who was known for following each and every sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, to the extent when he's traveling between Mecca and Medina, he would go and station at places where Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is stationed, and if Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had used bathroom somewhere, he would just go and sit over there. Just following that sunnah, he would not use bathroom there to disrespect, because that would be disrespect. He would just go and sit over there. This is the extent of his following of the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Saeed bin Jubair, after Abdullah bin Abbas radiallahu anhu passed away, started spending his time with Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhu and started learning all of these sunnahs and the practices from Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhu. This is why they call him Majma'ul Bahrain. These are two different oceans that he gathered within himself. One of his students, whose name was Zayd, says that Saeed bin Jubair rahimahullah used to finish one Quran in every 2 nights, which means each night of his life he would recite 15 juz of Quran during Salat al-Tahajjud. With all of this ilm that he's acquiring and he's teaching, all the classes that he's conducting, every night he's reciting 15 juz of Al-Quran al-Kareem. And here I need to remind myself and everyone that this is the beauty of this deen. And we find this thing very common among all the great scholars of Islam, Sahaba, Tabi'een, and their students. And throughout the history of Islam, you will find this thing very common among all the scholars of Islam, that they were not only in one field of just one knowledge, and no practice. It was ilm and amal, both together. And that is the secret behind their success. That they always put their knowledge into practice, and whatever they're teaching during the daytime, nighttime, you will see the person practicing those things. Throughout the day he's practicing. Nighttime he spends special time, and he would specify the time for the ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. People think that he's tired of the whole day. He was teaching, taking classes the whole day. He must be resting at his home. But those scholars of Islam are not resting, are not sleeping. They are before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the tears are falling on their eyes. For us, as soon as we get little ilm, little knowledge, if we are learning or teaching, we'll find ourselves that we are totally empty on the other hand. Hardly we perform the fara'id. We need to realize that there is no deen without practice. We can talk as much as we want. We can keep on running back and forth, taking classes, teaching people, using every mean and media of teaching people, of educating people, Muslims and non-Muslims. Do whatever we want. If it will not come into our lives, there is no deen. If we think we are working for deen, there is no deen without putting it into practice. And if we have not been able to put it in our practice, then forget about putting it in other people's lives. We won't be able to do it. Just khutbahs, just lectures, just classes, teaching. This is not everything. This is for the purpose of practicing it. And if we are not practicing, the ones who are teaching are not practicing, then of course what will happen to the ones that are learning? And if they are learning it only for the purpose of satisfying their thirst of knowledge, just claiming that I know something, or with the intention that I can teach others. This is not the purpose of Islam.